Dear colleagues, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to take part in this prominent seminar. So I would like to present you the experience of our company, Bureau Hyperborea, in the field of digitalization and decision support of Arctic navigation. Recently, a lot of attention in Russia and abroad has been paid to the development of various information services and applications for the centralized management of ship navigation in ice. The first example of such project is the Marine Operation Headquarters in Atomflot Company. This situational center is located in Murmansk and was put into operation in 2020. Another prospective project is the joint platform of digital services for the Northern Sea route, which is now under development in Rosatom. This system integrates many digital services and plays a role of think tank for tactical and operational management of Arctic fleet and coastal Arctic infrastructure. The main components of such information systems are monitoring, management, analysis, and the last but not least, the decision support. The diagram below shows the main domains of decision support subsystem. We can see that it covers many subject fields, but in my presentation, I will focus in more detail only on one of them. It's the service for automatic ice routing. Ice routing has many specific features and that distinguish it from open water routing. Some of them are of the quantitative nature. For example, higher variability of ice conditions in space and time, as well as the big number of ice parameters that need to be considered. But the main difference is that in ice routing, there are much more influencing factors as well as possible optimization variables that must be taken into account. They are the ability of ships to operate bow or stern forward, icebreaker escort and caravan movement, operations of ships in freezing ice channels, and in different zones of restricted navigation and shallow waters. Below, in my presentation, I will pay attention to those aspects that are marked with a circle. This slide gives a very brief information, a very brief introduction to the mathematical methods and algorithms for ship routing in ice that we use in our software. There are two basic approaches that allows finding the optimal path of a ship or a caravan in heterogeneous and non-stationary media. The first group of methods is the so-called cell-based methods, such as Dijkstra or A*STAR. They search the optimal path using a predefined discrete grid or graph. The second group is the cell-free algorithms or wave-based methods, such as isochrones or isocosts. They build a path in a continuous space. To extend the traditional formulation of routing problem, we developed the specific modifications for both mentioned approaches. The main feature of our approach is that during ice routing, we find not only the optimal trajectory of a ship, but also the optimal regime of its operation. Such regime includes the ship speed or the shaft power in each track point, the segments of bow or stern forward movement, and the preferred areas of icebreaker assistance. Also, we implemented a hybrid approach that combines the strengths of grid and wave methods. I will demonstrate the results of this method further. The criterion of our optimization problem is some conditional cost of voyage. The cost includes the voyage time, fuel costs, freight rates of a vessel and icebreaker, penalties for being out of schedule, and any other features of ice navigation, The criterion can be customized for specific tasks. To demonstrate the mentioned aspects of ice routing, we have chosen the specific case. This is the experimental voyage of Christophe de Margieri LNG carrier along the Northern Sea route in January and February of this year. Animation on this slide shows the details of the voyage. The passage to the east from Sabeta started and ended in January. The ship operated independently. In East Siberian Sea, it used an ice channel from another LNG carrier, Nikolai Zub. The path backwards took place in February and was accompanied by an icebreaker 50 Let Победы from the Bering Strait to the Gulf of Ok. To study the voyage, we used the following data sources. The first is the ship on board records that contain a lot of valuable information, such as observed ice conditions, shaft power of a ship, operation regime, and so on. This data is very accurate due to experimental nature of the voyage. The onboard records are indicated as a small black dots in animated picture. The other sources is ice track records that describes current ship coordinates obtained with a high frequency. Also, we used the raster data on the forecasted ice conditions provided by the specialists from Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute. And at the last, we consider the standard navigation data of bathymetry and zones of limited or prohibited navigation. During ice routing, we explicitly can consider the time that ship needs to rotate and change its heading. In heavy ice conditions, shipmasters prefer to move stern forward, since it allows them to increase the performance of the ship. You can see such stern forward segments on the studied voyages as dashed lines. The turnaround of a big ship takes both time and fuel. In addition, in very heavy ice, sometimes the ship cannot rotate. To estimate the time required for turnaround of a considered vessel in various ice conditions, we carried out a set of special sessions in the navigation simulator. To process the automatically recorded logs of these training sessions, we used a specific software which was developed by our company. The obtained results were used in further studies than running ice routing procedure. Now, I will shortly discuss the ways to account for the icebreaker assistance during the route planning of cargo ships. We suggest 3 approaches to solve the problem. The first and the simplest one is the planning of icebreaker escort for each voyage independently. In this case, we consider icebreakers as an unlimited resource, while the conditional price of their assistance is calculated using 2 parameters, the average waiting time and the icebreaker freight rate. By varying these parameters, we can obtain the tracks with different amount of icebreaker assistance. The second approach is the planning of icebreaker operation based on predefined graph or routes. In this case, we assign a schedule of cargo ship voyages as the input data for non-trivial mixed integer problem. Then this problem can be solved using standard method of discrete programming. And finally, the most sophisticated formulation is the simultaneous planning of several voyages of cargo ship in continuous space with limited number of accessible icebreakers. The principal approach here is to solve together the routing problem for each individual voyage and the joint vehicle resource planning task to arrange existing icebreakers along the route sections where icebreaker support is most efficient. For the moment, we have complete solution for the first 2 problems, but made only the first steps in a third one. Ship operation in ice channels is the other important feature of Arctic navigation. The permanent ice channels are laid in fast ice and usually maintained by icebreakers, while the temporary channels appear after vessel passage and can be used by another vessel. To predict ship performance in a channel, we need to know its characteristics and the current time. For this, we applied a model of ice channel dynamics that describes the freezing and melting of ice in each channel section, as well as the change of channel geometry after ship passage. Channel geometry is described by the thickness of consolidated layer, thickness of brush ice, and the parameters of channel walls. All these parameters are used as input data for the model of ship performance that estimates the resistance, attainable speed, and shaft power. Selected results of the model are shown top right. During solving the routing problem, both the ice channels and predefined fairways are described as vector linear objects in the geographical space. Our algorithms of pathfinding can use these linear objects and automatically merge them with optimal routes. Let me now discuss the sources of uncertainty in ice routing problem. This is quite a wide task, but I will try to draw some conclusions based on the restricted amount of data from given voyage. Firstly, we investigated the possible inaccuracy of data on ice conditions. Diagrams on the slide compare the ice parameters obtained from ice forecast model of Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute with the onboard records in the same place and at the same time. Top chart corresponds to the voyage to the east. The bottom one is the voyage to the west. It could be seen that some parameters are forecasted quite accurate. For example, ice concentration or compression. The accuracy of predicting the ice thickness is slightly lower. At the same time, we can see a significant underestimation in forecast hammocking, especially for the first part of the voyage to the east. The next slide is the next step of uncertainty analysis is the verification of ship performance model that we developed and used in routing task. There are two charts on this slide, and each chart contains 3 lines. The blue line is the actual ship speed taken from automatic identification system. Green one is the calculated ship speed for the case of using the onboard ice data as an input of ship performance model. And the red line is a calculated speed obtained using forecasted ice conditions. We can see that in case of east voyage, the speed calculated using ice forecasts is overestimated. The reason for this is most likely an underestimation of hammocking, because we see that the agreement between blue and green lines is better, while the green line considers actual hammocking. In the case of voyage to west, the calculated speed are slightly higher than actual ones, both for predicted and observed ice conditions. Based on this particular case of ship operation in a convoy, we may conclude that ship performance model for the case requires some improvement. Final stage of uncertainty analysis is the verification of the procedure of automatic ice routing itself. Here we can see the comparison of actual and recommended tracks for direct and backwards voyages. In addition to these two variants, the table on the right contains the characteristics of vessel movement along the actual track according to our model of ship ice performance. Actual and calculated routes for direct voyage are rather similar. They both contain the long segments of stern forward movement, spatial temporal location of these segments, correspond one another. The difference between actual and calculated routes for the backward voyage is more significant. In particular, the calculated route goes much closer to the coast in the Arctic Sea in order to bypass the zone of rather severe ice. Color in the map correspond to the integral possibility for the particular vessel. The whiter the color, the heavier the ice and worse ship performance. By the way, the calculated routes turn out to be better in all cases in terms of chosen optimization. This slide summarizes the principal results of uncertainty analysis for considered cases. Here, we enumerate the main problems caused by the uncertainties in ice forecasts, uncertainties due to applied model of ship ice performance, as well as the non-considered and subjective factors. For example, the highlighted region of significant underestimation of the model-based speed in comparison with the actual one can be explained very simply. According to the onboard records, at that time, the ship moved in a channel formed by the adverse voyage of the ship Nikolai Zubov. This example shows the importance of taking into account the temporary breaks and leads in ice fields that have natural or artificial origin. The video on these slides reflects two issues. The first is that we demonstrate the idea of the proposed hybrid grid and wave-based approach. The purpose of this approach is to improve the efficiency of numerical algorithms for path finding. In this, we build the optimal path in two stages. The primary route is obtained by means of A-star algorithm, which is a cell-based method. Later, the route is refined and smoothed using the ISOCOST wave-based algorithms. At this stage, the area of wave propagation is limited by a tube around the trajectory that was pre-calculated at the first stage. Second issue we try to address on this site is related to use the regularly updated ice forecast or adaptive ice routing. It means that any new received data, for example, a new forecast of ice conditions, may require a calculation of the remaining part of a route. Therefore, the final recommended route of a vessel is obtained during several replannings of a track in the voyage. In next two slides, we present several conclusions and recommendations that arises from our studies. I will not comment them all and just point out the last section, which is about the role of automated ice routing services in the modern decision support systems. The main conclusion here is that at the current moment, ice routing may be used as a tool and instrument in the hands of the experienced ice expert. Such expert can use routing to analyze different paths and possible directions of some voyage. However, routing technology is not ready yet to run in fully automated mode. And the main reason of this is a high uncertainty of ice conditions that I mentioned before. Perhaps further, when diagnostic ice data and ice forecasts evolve and develop more and more, the role of automatic ice routing may change significantly. So, thank you a lot for your kind attention. And finally, here below, you can see the link for downloading the demo web client of our routing service. You may download it and test yourself. We hope that it will be interesting and useful. Thank you again, and maybe some questions.